Well, thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to speak. I think this is my second personal trainers conference, but always a pleasure to be here. I'm not here to dissect classification criteria and to go through all the stuff that's in the diagnostic statistical manual regarding this. What I am here to do is help you all to figure out what is it and what do you do with it, right? So NSCA and the PTC is very practical in its nature. That's what I'm going to give you, is practical, what you should be looking for, why you should be looking for certain criteria, and then what do you do to possibly help these people that may have a problem. So let me give you a little quick background. I appreciate Doug's introduction, but a lot of previous talks here have set the stage with performance-enhancing supplements, drugs, physique performance. Sean Arendt, I think, gave a really nice talk talking about how sometimes the aesthetics of what we look like go over into the athletic performance area. So I'm here to kind of help understand what is it that makes that person maybe focus more so on their body and less on their performance, or vice versa, okay? So what got me into this? Actually, I was sitting with a friend a couple of days ago. Anybody ever hear of Photable? Little app that, Photable? It's an app where you can take a picture of yourself and you can do, you know, different screens and whatnot. So he took a picture, he did a bro pic, right? He's like, well, I'm at the gym, I'm giving my, you know, taking my bro pic, and he was overlaying his abs, which the guy's a good-looking guy. He's got a lot of, you know, features that are commendable, I guess you could say. And he was overlaying these abs onto his own abs. And you could change the opacity, I guess it's called. So he's like, well, you don't want it to be too obvious, you know, and oh, see this tone. He was so involved with this, I said, why don't you do an extra 10 minutes on some sort of exercise? Here you are, you know, you're doing this thing. Well, you know, it's what that person's going to look at. So it just got me thinking about this talk. So let me get started for a second. I have no conflicts of interest regarding this. So I have my contact information up there. There's a lot of stuff I'm going to cover in a very short period of time. I do want to cover some case studies with you. I think that's more the practical part of this. But really what got me interested in this field probably was in the late 1990s. Does anybody remember Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire in Major League Baseball, right? What were they duking out? Home runs, right? Home runs, power. So, you know, we're watching this on the center stage. Who's going to win the home run battle? And then, of course, what crept up into the discussion? Steroids, right? These guys are big. Their arms are huge. They're powerful guys. So, of course, then that started getting me into the area of looking at steroids, performance-enhancing drugs. But what actually got me backwards is when I started doing my PhD work, I was more interested in what precedes steroids, what precedes a person to use something like androstenedione, if you remember that back in the day, or creatine. And it really came back to body image dissatisfaction, and what people are willing to do to get what they want, whether it be a home run, whether it be power, whether it be a certain look or aesthetic. So fast forward, I ended up going backwards in time and working with one of my great mentors, Harrison Pope, who is the person who coined the term muscle dysmorphia. So that's probably my bias that I'm going to give to you today, which is talking with him. We published a study that I'm going to refer to in this talk that relates to how we can identify it in either the sports medicine realm, personal trainer realm, strength and conditioning world. You can see from my alphabet soup there, I straddle a lot of different worlds. I am strength and conditioning as much as I am athletic training, as much as I am in the world of research. So I'm going to reference those studies as well, but let's get into it. You have in the booklet, you can see what I'm going to cover. I really hope to spend more time on the latter part there, right? So really, what can you do to identify and what can you do to approach in terms of treatment? So right down here is where I'm going to spend the majority of time. So I'm going to take you through the different sections. As part of what this talk will define is really what is muscle dysmorphia. We'll talk a little bit about who is affected by it, but the data are unclear. We don't exactly have a strong understanding of like, oh, you're going to have muscle dysmorphia or you don't. So we'll talk a little bit about considerations. In terms of recognition, I'm really more interested in what your role is in using the senses that you have every single day. You have the privilege of seeing these people multiple times a day, multiple times a week, depending on your setting. So what is it that you're actually looking at in terms of what creates this environment of a super focus on your body and a super focus on your body image in particular? We'll then move on and talk about assessment. So I'm going to, like I said, I don't want to get into where should muscle dysmorphia fall. Is it a spectrum disorder? Is it OCD? Is it body dysmorphic disorder? But what I do want to leave you with is a discussion about how do we actually use some measures that are fairly simple down and dirty to identify. We'll then move on. Probably what you're more interested in understanding is how do you kind of work with these people? How do you manage them? So we'll talk about dialoguing, maybe what not to do. And then hopefully, if you do find a person who has this, which I hope you don't, because I hope they don't exist, we'll talk more about how can you reprogram the norms and the culture, whether it be in your personal training realm or your strength and conditioning world, if you're a strength and conditioning coach. And then some other stuff that's out there, pharmacotherapies and other more controversial treatments like electroconvulsive therapy. And then hopefully we'll tackle at least one of these case studies. I think they're all different and unique in their own right, so we'll spend a little bit of time discussing that as well. So let's start off with considerations, a little bit of what muscle dysmorphia is. As you can see here, and as I mentioned previously, Harrison Pope did a lot of work over the years, over the past 20 plus years, that he first coined as reverse anorexia. And why he did that is because he had this group of bodybuilders, note bodybuilders, not general population, that approached, the diagnostic criteria with his other partners that said, this is a cluster, this is a group of people that we should be studying a little bit more. They have shared characteristics. So he came to this conclusion with his colleagues that this group of 108 bodybuilders had a perceptual distortion. What does that mean? Sometimes we call it a body image distortion, or whatever it may be. It led to, as you can see down here, a lot of problems for these people. So even though they looked healthy and everything, it was something that he said is notable, it's different, we should study more of it. So breaking it down, a few years later in 1997, he actually formalized the criteria. I hope you don't mind if I come down here. With a couple of his colleagues. So he was more interested at this point saying, okay, how do we actually cluster these people together, and what does it mean for working with them? So what he found, according to body dysmorphic disorder, is it kind of fit within this realm. So this is where I don't want to spend a ton of time on where does it fall and what do you, how do you place it. Why it's important to understand where muscle dysmorphia falls is simply because that's how you're going to get them treated. If you say it's like an eating disorder, guess what? Treatment would be more like an eating disorder. If we say it's more like an OCD issue, obsessive compulsive disorder, well then that's a different line. Not a whole different line, but a different line. So just wanted to highlight a few things here. In DSM-5, which is what we use to analyze people in terms of their mental health, they actually moved it under obsessive compulsive. So most of us probably associate what? Obsessive compulsive with what? Washing the hands, right? Repetitive behaviors. But obsessive thoughts, and then the compulsion is, what are you going to do about it? So the obsession here would be my body, my muscularity, my leanness. And then my compulsion would be, what am I going to do to actually make myself more muscular or more lean, or both in this case? And most of the time, it's not very good for us in terms of what people do. That could be steroid use, excessive dieting, orthorexia, spending too much time away from normal social engagements like your family, your friends, your job. So DSM now is saying muscle dysmorphia is a subsection under OCD, under body dysmorphic disorder, because it specifically focuses itself on muscularity and leanness, okay? So that's the perceptual distortion. If you're more of a visual graphic learner, so we have eating disorders on this side of the graphic, anorexia, bulimia, we have others, of course. But under obsessive compulsive disorder, I'm going to focus more over here, right? So body dysmorphic disorder, which is an obsession with some level or part of your body, right? It could be your ear, your hair. Again, in this case, we're talking about muscularity. And then it can manifest in different ways. It can be exercise dependence, with or without muscle dysmorphia. It might be strictly exercise dependence. And you can see some of the features there as well. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, what percent do you think of guys that work out? And those kind of
I'm going to show you a graphic that will probably have that discussion. So if you can hang on for 1 second there. So the criteria that is used or proposed by Pope back from 1993 was it had to create a level of discontent in your overall life, right? It wasn't enough to say, oh, I like to work out, I spend 2 hours, 3 hours. That doesn't mean you have muscle dysmorphia. So if you have clients that are in the gym with you 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, whatever, they're working out intensely, that does not mean they have muscle dysmorphia, okay? So let's be clear about that. What it does mean is maybe they're sacrificing some other parts of their everyday life to get a goal going or to work on a goal. And that doesn't, again, mean it's pathological. It just means it's what they do. So when we look at the criteria, I like to boil it all down because that's a lot to read. Muscle dysmorphia is somebody who has an obsession with, again, muscularity and leanness, usually both. They are willing to be compulsed to excessively diet and exercise. They usually sacrifice personal commitments. So I've read several case studies. I've talked with Dr. Pope about people who have lost marriages because of this. A very well-known lawyer actually lost his partner in a law firm because he was in between clients doing his protein shakes, noise, messiness, and everything like at a law firm. Well, you have to let me do this. You have to let me do this. So it provokes a lot of problems there, avoiding the body being exposed. So these are not people that you would see on the beach taking the shirts off with the tank tops on. These are people that are more ashamed, but they go to the gym and they try to atone for that shame that they have. And then, of course, probably what you see a lot of and what I see a lot of as an athletic trainer is injury, right? That's usually what sparks my eye, like, oh, okay, you have tendon ruptures, you're 23, what's going on here, right? So the etiology, and this probably gets to your point a little bit, is who would be affected, right? So we can see average ages probably pushing around 20. We don't know prevalence studies. I just did an interview a couple of months ago, I think it was with Time Magazine, and they were asking, how many people are affected by this? Well, if you just break down some basic numbers of what we do know, if you said of 5 or 6 million memberships, 5% of the weightlifters may have this, you're looking at roughly, 500,000 people that could be affected. Of those 500,000 in the United States, 100,000 may meet the formal criteria for diagnosed as muscle dysmorphic. Now, is that a lot? Some people would say, I work in the field of epidemiology. Some people would say, well, that's not a lot. I mean, that's a drop in the bucket. That's nothing. Well, picture a major NFL stadium, since we're on Sunday here. Every single person in that stadium has muscle dysmorphia. That's a lot, right? Every single person you're sitting next to has these types of problems. And it's also something that we see in a Western phenomenon, right? So it's something that we don't see as much in Asia, which suggests there might be some level of how you view your body differently in different parts of this world. It seems to be a Western trend. So, boiling this down, we see it in younger males in terms of usually when it starts. We see it more in our Western world. And then we see it in weightlifters that have poor insight, already have other concerns about their body, so body image disorders. And then men who have sex with men. We also see that as a higher proportion as well. Did that somewhat attend to your question?
Yeah, and I was just thinking that social media,
Yeah.
the rise of social media kind of pushed those numbers up because the whole sharing.
You got it. You got it. Yep. So we'll cover a little bit of that as well. So where are the challenges here? What is causing it? Is it something that is social media driven? Is it something like anorexia where we do find there's some sort of genetic component to it? So is this another, and this is why it's important to classify it properly. If it's more like an eating disorder, it may have a genetic component, which means we have to pay more attention to biologics like depression drugs, SSRIs. So what actually is the problem is what's going to drive the treatment processes here. So again, what you're referencing here in the media is, don't know how to say that person's last name, but they were saying, you know what, it doesn't really exist. It's a hype. It's a hype thing. It's something that Pope and his colleagues noticed something. It exists just naturally in people. Some people are more competitive. Some people are willing to do more. But, it's not necessarily something that's a problem other than within that one individual or group of individuals. So here's kind of the paradigm problem. Is it OCD or eating disorder related? Is it body dysmorphic disorder and a body problem, a somatization disorder? Or, as the previous author said, is it hype? Is it just kind of a thing that we notice? Right? And I would reflect that back to the practitioners that are seeing this every single day. I usually have people in audiences that attend that say, I kind of experienced a little bit of this, or I know a very close friend or a workout partner that experienced this. There's something to it. I think we can at least agree that there's enough evidence over the past 20 years for it to be included in the DSM-5 as whether or not it actually exists or not. But again, I'll leave that with you and your practical experiences. So the debate, again, usually drives what we're going to do with these people. I'm not concerned, and again, my purpose here this morning is not here to tell you where to classify and everything. If you agree that it's classified in a certain area, such as body dysmorphic disorder, and it falls within that subtype, then there are clear treatments of what you should be thinking about and doing. I'm going to offer a little more practical suggestion in terms of what we wrote about 12 years ago, which is if you're working with somebody like this, here's what we found to be successful with them. Armstrong and Maida actually confirmed what are the strongest factors when they interview people that had stronger compulsions. So if you look at the central line, it started with OCD, it led to a distinct concern with certain parts of their body, and then the symptoms, right? So it's a pretty clear, strong line, but it doesn't mean that people aren't dissatisfied with other parts of their body or that they share other overarching criteria, okay? So where does it belong? Again, you can do some background reading if you want to. That's not my goal here. I just wanted to make mention of this. They were in favor, these Murray and all, were saying it's more along the lines of an eating disorder like anorexia. However, they do say muscle dysmorphia should or could be reanalyzed based on these criteria, which again would guide different practices. How do you treat them? Right? So again, you can read through, weigh the literature. It's not clear is one of the major take-home points. So what's your role? Okay? In terms of recognition, we all have different, some people are the spotters, some people are the actual like, here, come talk to me. Some people are more of the, let me just report it to somebody else. So you have an interesting role because you are working with these people every day or every week. You see them routinely. You can notice if there's a change in their personality types. So let's talk a little bit about that. Because they often appear healthy, they're doing something that's health-related, we give them that little bias, that thumbs up like, yeah, you're working out? Oh, you fool, why are you working out? Right? Nobody's going to say that. We are in a culture where we say, you're the couch potato, there's something wrong with you. You're obese, you have high A1C, you need to get it down, right? We want to fix people that appear or seem like they're not doing the best that they can. This is something where they're doing it. They're there, right? They're in the gym, they're in sports, they're doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. So they often go about their routines unnoticed until somebody says, you know, you're doing a little too much. Or again, as an athletic trainer, I would connect certain injuries to say, you ruptured your Achilles. Like, you're young, you shouldn't have that happen, okay? So also talking about issues with people, so personal and social implications. Something may not seem right. You may overhear them talking about maybe a relationship that failed. That would be a key indicator. Maybe talk with them a little bit more. There's a nice discussion about motivational interviewing. So instead of asking closed-ended questions like, oh, do you think your exercise is related to your social problems, ask them about opening up a little bit about what maybe compromise your social situations. You know, tell me about your breakup a little bit. Right? We have a lot of time in between either treating them or working with them through personal training. So again, I kind of reiterated some of these maladjustments that we may see. A lot of morbidity issues. We are on the front lines, whether you're in the athletic training setting, personal training setting, strength and conditioning setting. We see them every day. And oftentimes there's that blurred perception between athletic performance, I'm sure you see this, and what you should look like. So I just wrote up there, just to remind myself, the baseball catcher example. Tommy, Indiana State, when I was there in grad school. Huge. Just, he was like the epitome of a great baseball player, great catcher, but he looked like a bodybuilder playing catcher. And what cues led me to say, I want to talk with you, Tommy, for a second, is he was always in for treatment. He always had back problems, always had shoulder problems. I'm an athletic trainer. Okay, I'm supposed to work with you. It was one night after a very grueling practice. I remember they were preparing for a pretty solid season. So I went to the local recreation facility on campus, and I'm doing my, trying to keep myself in shape, and who walks in with all of his injuries, dragging his leg? There's Tommy. So I'm on the stair stepper, so I'm looking over like, oh gosh. So finally I said, I need to approach him, maybe just nicely, and say, hey, what's up, buddy? How are you doing? How are you doing? What are you doing in here? Oh, just getting a quick workout. Okay, Tommy, you just did like the equivalency of 4 workouts throughout the day. It's 7 o'clock at night. What are you doing? Don't you have class, work? So we got into more of a discussion, and very clearly I started connecting the processes with his thought processes with the outcome. Why are you in here? He couldn't explain why he was in there. He just kept saying, I'm in here to kind of get just a quick workout. Well, you didn't answer my other question, which was, you already did a very substantial workout. Aren't you sore? What about your heel? What about your shoulder? Okay, so that perked up my understanding of my athlete in terms of what should I be following in terms of his progress, right? So we'll get back to that a little bit later. But these criteria, again, notice here from our graphic, it says self-destructive behaviors. Disordered eating, overtraining, that's Tommy. Wickedly overtraining. Even though he looked great, even though he would walk out onto that field, everybody's like, look at Tommy, oh my gosh, your biceps are 18 or 20 inches today, Tommy. He loved it, he soaked it up, but he was suffering in silence. So what else leads to where we take this, and again, I don't want to go too much into the models, but this one shows you a little bit of that central core of body dissatisfaction. There's low self-esteem. These are all conversation pieces too, folks, okay? These are things, they're not just graphics up there where scientists just load in all these regression equations. These are conversation starters. If you think a person's perfectionistic, what type of question could you ask to unpack that? Have you always been perfectionistic? If you feel like they focus a lot on media pressure, maybe have a discussion about how do you view, are they always on their Instagram? Are they always posting those photables that I was talking about? That might be another part of it. So help connect this together. Don't just look at these graphics and say, oh, you know, it's just stuff. So where does it come from? Again, there's a linkage here, possibly with childhood issues, maybe being bullied, maybe feeling undervalued by a family, for example, family member, maybe being victimized. We've seen this in women that have reported muscle dysmorphia. And then, again, we see the cascade of events, anxiety, depression, to OCD about those problems, and then the reaction, which might be, you know, I have this low self-esteem. When I work out, I feel better about myself, and therefore I'm going to continue to do it. And we also live in this culture of more is better, right? So if I feel good when I'm exercising, I might want that to continue throughout the day. Well, how do I do it? I exercise more. David Todd, he's out of Australia, I believe now, did a really interesting study with muscle dysmorphia. He measured their level of happiness during exercise, right? So somebody might say, well, I like the pump. I like the feeling of being pumped up when I'm walking around the gym during my 2 hours. Okay, what happens to your level of satisfaction after, an hour after, 2 hours, 3 hours? And it gradually went down. So there's some connection with the physiologic parts of working out with the mental processes that these people feel. And again, we have to take these into consideration with how we work with people. So this very fancy word, the trends diagnostic model basically said there seems to be some perfectionism, there seems to be some level of mood intolerance, so this could be depression, this could be low self-esteem, or simply anxiety, and then social pressures, right, that we all feel very intimately, usually every single day. Other parts, relationships, like I said, a lot of stuff that I'm stuffing at you right now, but I want to make sure we have enough time to chat. So athletic goals sometimes conflate with what we are seeing with people that have muscle dysmorphia. Tommy was always at odds, right? He needed to get his mental and physical aligned, but he also knew that the coach expected him to be the best catcher, best baseball player he could be. So there was always that level of sacrifice. In fact, one time, coach was, well, I won't get into his personality, but very demanding, put it that way. And Tommy was finishing up a workout. We didn't have text at that time because I'm old. He let one of the grad students know, I'm going to be like 10 minutes late. He gets in there, the coach is rip-roaring mad, and he comes over, he's like, tell him I was in treatment. I said, well, I can't tell you you're in treatment. You're here and my grad student's here. I can't do that. Where were you, Tommy? Where was he? Finishing up a quick workout. Constantly, right? Quick workout. So there was a lot of sacrifice in his world, even for something that he valued, which was baseball, right? His athletic identity was called into question as well. We see it in muscular images that might drive it home. Garcia found muscle dysmorphia and exercise-dependent traits. David Todd, like I said, found that happiness trait to go along with exercise as well. There's a lot of other clinical signs and symptoms and features here. I'm just giving you in your packet just maybe where you want to do some light reading. But these are great researchers in this area and field. These are some of the issues that they've identified, right? So it may relate to bodybuilding dependence. It usually has something to do with physique camouflaging. So there's a lot of features that you may want to take a look at, right? Increasing thoughts of muscularity. And again, we've seen models develop that kind of confirm where are some of these areas that you may want to talk to these people about, right? Oftentimes we talk a lot about diet, we talk a lot about programming. Do we talk a lot about physique concern? Right? I know we don't have a huge audience in here, but how many of you have worked with your clients where that is part of what they want? That's your stereotypic, right? Younger 20-year-old male comes in, I want six-pack abs. I just heard that in a previous talk. Young lady, I want a thin, slender waistline, right? These are the body image pressures. The best question is why? And again, I think Sean was saying, not what, what do you want? Okay, I got that, but why do you want that? That might be the more relevant question. And of course, there are morbid factors, right? If you're going to react to this obsession, and be compulsed to use steroids or other performance-enhancing drugs, we're going to expect to see long-term effects, maybe beyond when you're working with them, right? The geriatric population. What we're finding now and what Pope and his colleagues are finding is higher rates of cardiovascular damage from people in the 70s and 80s that were using anabolic steroids when they were less regulated, when they were more available. Well, now we're finding that steroids are actually cardiotoxic. What does that mean? Well, heart problems, heart disease, hypertension, and other issues that we may see as well. So let's move on to assessment. What can you do? So like I said, we have the DSM criteria that has been modified. That's great. For years, we did not have muscle dysmorphia in the DSM. We simply had muscle dysmorphia listed under body dysmorphic disorders. So what did that mean for people? It just simply meant that you didn't get proper access to discussions and treatment. So I'm going to show you a couple of scales and indices, but before we do that, if you align it with eating disorders, treat it like an eating disorder. If you align it with a somatization issue, like body dysmorphic disorder, read up on the literature with that. I'm not saying you're going to have like 5 clients next week that you're going to be suspicious of. What I am saying is you may have that one person every 5 years that kind of puts up the red flags with either things that they're talking about, things that they say. And this is why it's important to talk about what's important to them. Right? What does their diet look like? What do their routines look like? How do you modify that? Personal trainers, strength and conditioning professionals, we are masters in modification, are we not? I'm floored out there watching like these tiny little tweaks in breathing or doing a proper squat. I'm floored with like, that makes a difference. You, in the psychosocial realm, can make that tiny little tweak of taking time with that person that can make a huge difference. So I'll leave you to think about that, hopefully. And then how we go about doing this. Do you compliment them? We kind of make a living on praise, don't we? We praise people. Good job. Great work. I like what I'm seeing there. How do you work with somebody that has an obsession with their body image? What do you praise? Should we be praising them? Right? Hey, Tommy, your pecs look really ripped today. Great. You know what that means? More's better. I'm going to go do more. That's a tough one, right? So is there an alternative? Are there alternatives that we can use instead of direct praise? Have a good question and answer session with them. Again, these are hard to see. But if you're dealing with something like social avoidance, you might want to ask them a question like, hey, haven't heard you talk about visiting your family lately. What's going on there? These are just provocation questions. Non-threatening, not something that's going to make them say, oh, they're on to me. They're going to tell me to stop working out. Because that's probably the biggest fear with somebody that actually has muscle dysmorphia. You're injured, stop working out, don't do what you normally do. We can use pretty easy assessments that look at different levels of cognition. So what do you think about muscle dysmorphia? What do you feel currently? What do you currently do? We probably would focus a lot on affect and behavioral, right? The very nature of personal training and strength and conditioning is behavioral. So this is using some different tools here like the MDI scale down here in the corner. There's also some other very, very good scales that have good reliability, good validity that can be used, that can help people identify very quickly. Sit down with them, you know. Hey, I want to ask you a few questions. You don't have to tell them, I am giving you the MDI scale and I want you to answer honestly, right? You don't have to do that. You can be very discreet about it. You could ask them over a course of a week or a few sessions. Hey, let me ask you another question. Basically, I'm not saying hide things from them, but just ask them as a nature of holistic health, okay? So with management, kind of what you're talking about, Doug, is dialoguing, right? What types of questions are going to be most beneficial to help that person know, I've been noticing you've spent 8 hours a day in the gym. You know, motivational interviewing is really, really skillful because it helps a person consider their own thoughts, right? It's not what I want you to talk about, it's what's happening with you. Right? It's very open. If I said, how's your day going? I can be very close-ended and say, hey, nice day, huh? He already knows. Sure. Even though it may have nothing to do with nice, he might say, I have a headache and all this stuff. It's a fine line, and I'm sure you've worked with people where you're very careful maybe to not open up Pandora's box because they'll tell you what's going on, right? But this might be a case where you know his personality is more introspective. How do you make him a little bit more aware of that? So let's chat about that, what not to do, right? Here are just some basic steps, and again, this comes from Schneering's research, practical article a few years back. first and foremost, how do you approach this? First, you have to get to the point of creating trust that they will come to you, they will talk to you about some issues. Are there other issues happening, right? One of the best, not best for them, but best ways for myself as a sports medicine professional to attack this issue, and again, I haven't worked with a ton of people on this, is injury. You're seeing me. Yeah, there's a reason why you're here. And while you're here, I'm going to start asking you what caused this injury? Were you doing something stupid? I've found that just by working with the common denominator, like what brings you here today, is one of the best ways to have that conversation. Non-accusatory, it's very factually based, right? You wouldn't be here unless you had a problem. I've also been an athletic trainer in an athletic training facility. And sometimes students, people would come to me just to talk. What brings you here today? You're injured? No. Why are you here? Oh, okay, you want the psychosocial part. I get it, I'm happy to offer that. But sometimes we simply just have to ask, why are you here? What are you talking about? It's about engagement, right? If we're working with athletes, their focus really is competition. If it's not, that might be a window to actually ask them, what are you aligning with, right? You don't seem like you're as engaged with, the championships coming up. Talk to me about that. What's going on? The accusatory tone goes along the lines of any eating disorder or any psychological disorder, right? Stigmatizing them. And again, it's going to be very difficult because these people are going to be very easily swayed away. I don't need to talk to you then. I know my exercise routine works. Or this also can be in the realm of dieting in general, right? Weight loss. It doesn't just have to be muscle dysmorphia. But some things take time. I think yesterday there was a nice discussion about the writing mechanism that we all have. We want to fix people. We want to fix things. Person's doing an improper lunge technique. We want to go right in there. What do we want to do? Don't move you here and get you here, right? Don't go over. That's fairly easy, but how many times do you have to do that? Do they learn it right off the bat? Do they say, oh, I got it, and it's perfect? No, you might have to correct them a few times, maybe 10 times, maybe 15 times, okay? Same thing holds true with psychosocial. Mm-hmm.
PT or
absolutely.
PT or, and that's where it feels, asking about the relationships and their family, it's like, well, that's not really your job.
True.
Your job is to
True.
help me get better.
So what I would say to that, though, is in any of our code of ethics, whether strength and conditioning, personal training, sports medicine, it does leave that window for psychosocial, holistic health, or psychosocial engagement. So I agree with you. Don't practice outside of the context of what you're able to prescribe or to do, but certainly you can practice within a window of saying, look, I'm caring for you. I want to get you to a certain area, but maybe I don't have the actual skills and tools to do that. But you do have the opportunity to say, I'm noticing something and I want to help you. And that is within all of our code of practice acts within medicine. And
Part of it is driving back to their goals and
sure.
maybe diving in a little deeper to what their goals are because
Yep.
It's just to get
Yeah.
bigger and bigger in order to do what, kind of
Sure.
ask why questions.
It's tough too because you don't want to pathologize behavior either. Sometimes we pathologize good things that people are doing. So really understanding and unpacking with them, what are they sacrificing? That's what I would spend more time with. Injury, what are you sacrificing? What's a little abnormal compared to other people that are enthusiasts in terms of working out, right? If it lives your life and you're not living your life, that's part of the problem. So conceptually, we have a lot of other considerations. This comes from our publication a few years back that is kind of a flow chart, an algorithm, right? If you have an athlete or a person, it could be a client, there's some sort of interaction, what happens? Okay, most of the time they're not going to accept that they have a problem. It's nice when they do because then you can say, oh, go talk to a sports psychologist or somebody else. If not, right, if they deny it, well, this is where your time factor is going to come into play. You really have to think about how long are you going to have with them? Do you see these people every single day? Are you going to have the ability to follow up with them? Should you send them right off the bat to the physician? That's probably not going to happen. So it's a flow pattern where you have to understand what questions are going to be most impactful at that point in time. What are you going to connect them with in terms of any services, if any services? And then the P word, patience. Patience, patience, patience. Sometimes the realization of an injury is what gets them there, unfortunately. Right? We want to be preventative. We don't want to be patient to the point of saying, I'm going to be patient until you rip you tear a tendon or something. Oh, now I gotcha, right? We want to be proactive. In terms of treatments, like I said, there's a lot of approaches. We do borrow from other disorders, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, psychoeducation, but it's difficult because we don't even have a proper classification of it. We don't have a proper way in which we can tell a person, here's what's going to work for you. It's very individualized. It's a very developing field of research. Okay? There has been, as what I put up here, there has been some pretty good movement in the areas of SSRIs because depression seems to coexist. There seems to be some with challenge-based psychoeducation. So for example, how many hours a day do you work out? 4. Okay, can we work with 3 hours and 45 minutes? Can we work with 3 hours and 30 minutes? Can we work with 2 hours? Getting them to a point of where safety is one of the primary parts of concern, but also gradually working with them, right? Not saying, hey, you know what, take a break for 3 days, stop. They'll horrified. Like, what? Literally, cortisol levels will spike, depression, they'll go out of their minds, okay? So it's really working with the norming of the environment. Maybe creating a little more emphasis with coaches. Maybe performance should be more of an emphasis instead of how you look. For example, I was working with a younger lady who is a hurdler. Coach told her she needs to lose weight because she's going to fly over the hurdles better. Or you can develop your muscle strength to propel yourself a little bit more, right? It's a tough decision. These, again, are lacking empirical evidence or validation. Treatment with athletes, again, everybody is unique, everybody's different. These are some techniques, again, in the graphics that you can see. You can access this article. It was published in 2005. But just kind of pulling a few of these out. Encourage the athlete from jumping to conclusions about what others think. Good luck in today's world because social media is what drives what a lot of people put out there. Right? It's a very difficult area to be. Support the entire athlete, focusing on positive and negative reinforcement. So again, if they're getting negative reinforcement from their coaches, work with their coaches. Right? You might sidestep the athlete for a moment, and if you heard something repetitively about a coach, you might want to approach that coach and say, look, this is not okay to be promoting something that is not healthful or something that may exclusively compromise performance because you're pushing them too hard. Right? These are some different approaches. Again, you can read through these. They're very straightforward. But again, prepare yourself. Research the issue carefully. That's probably why you're here. Non-accusatory tone, response, depending on the athlete. Most will deny or pull away. Reassure them that you're only concerned. Avoid power struggles, right? Again, that's part of, I'm here to work with you. It's very much a side-by-side. Even how you approach them. Right now, I'm speaking to the crowd, right? Instead of coming down and saying, look, we're going to have a conversation, right? So let's talk about the issue here. That's a lot more appealing than a person that's over you, than a person that's dominating over you, right? So these are some approaches that may work. So really quickly, because I know we're pretty much down on time, these are some of the possibilities of what you might see, right? So case 1, drive for muscle leanness, complex case features, comes from Caffrey et al. So male, 20 years old, college sophomore, single, Hispanic, fairly normal height, good BMI, right? So he was a little heavier at 16. His focus was on leanness. He had a lot of social impairment, right? So he would weight lift for 4+ hours a day. He would eat specific foods. He was this guy that would carry around the jug of water and weigh out his meals and have them in these little packages. He was spending more time doing this stuff than spending time on his college schoolwork, right? So there's your compromise right there. So what I'm saying is this is a good area to maybe focus on that. Maybe work with an academic advisor, talking about grades. How are you keeping up with your schoolwork? It's great that you're eating healthy. It's great that you're concerned about it, but what are you compromising? And are you willing to compromise that for that? Sometimes it's that awareness, that perceptual awareness that can guide a person. So this person also had some other problems. Crohn's disease, age 18, lost a lot of weight, and also uses other substances. So the bottom line with this is there's sometimes not just one profile, sometimes this is a multitude of issues, right? Cannabis use, cocaine, steroid use. This person was dealing with a lot of other issues. And then just to show you a couple of quick other ones, and I'll wrap up. Case study number 2 here. Sometimes we have a central eating disorder issue that relates, that gets magnified by other issues that a person's working through. So this person happens to be Muslim. Fasting is part of it. Oh my gosh, fasting? Oh my God, how do I be a good Muslim and also attend to my issues, right? So that's something else to consider. And then lastly, in the third case, sometimes it's not a steroid issue. Sometimes it's a person that has more of a compulsion issue. So I'll stop there because I know we're just about down with time, but I like the interaction. I think there were some really good points that were brought out by the questions that you're asking. Hopefully I was able to cover some of those as well. The slides will take you through more of the direct approaches, and feel free, I'll talk to you afterwards if you want, or I'm here all day. Thank you.